I'm okay with anything you do, Tommy.
Good. Okay, sir. State your name, please. Here we go.
Okay, David Shapiro, the founder of the United Independent Taxi Drivers and now a full-time taxi driver.
Push the time clock.
The drivers are suffering a depression within a recession. It's impossible if they don't work 20 hours at the airport on their fifth day to survive. There are conditions now which I warned you would be under the franchise system, which are now representative of gangster-like tactics on the part of a minority of drivers, and I feel it because I'm an outspoken leader against the franchise system. At the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, for example, on the stand, drivers there from other persuasions, they're not born in America, they're not used to having any rules enforced, will just reserve places ahead of you, will give short trips away ahead of you. There are no rules being enforced anymore about the lines, and I don't think in my case that's an accident. Parking tickets are being used, I think, and abused, directed again at me as a leader, which is easy for y'all to do anytime you want to. And I thought I sat here and heard the committee pass that we would not get tickets in our residential areas. And yet I keep getting it, and I'm told by the staff that you have not passed it as a council. The conditions are opprobrious. There is no enforcement, no rules. There's muscle, and there's great exploitation in terms of taking fees from the lease drivers by the franchise owners. And the people born in foreign countries who drive are afraid. And I even met a senior American who has lost his business now driving a cab, and he warned me about retaliation.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn the meeting back to our chair, Bill Rosendahl. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl, for letting me start our public comment. Thank you, Mr. Shapiro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Labange.
Dr. Clyde,
Go ahead, you're up.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Also a member of the Sierra Club Transportation Committee, which is starting again. We're looking at doing corridor studies for Northeast LA. That is San Fernando Road, Figueroa, Broadway, Mission, Huntington Drive. However, it seems that the LA Department of Transportation wants to use our thoroughfares primarily as commuter routes to supplement the 110, the 2, and the 10. So we're quite concerned regarding the amount of traffic that we get on, especially Huntington Drive, the 3 lanes each way, and one day the traffic light went out, and it was utter chaos. So we're quite concerned about that, but once I was told that, well, LA DOT has to phase the lighting so that traffic will go through in an expeditious manner from Monrovia down to downtown. Where do all these cars go? We don't know, but one of the things I believe is a key is the all-day parking for less than $10 a day. So maybe there's a connection here that if you increase the all-day parking, not the retail short-term parking, but the all-day parking by, say, $10 a space per day for every weekday, you might find that people would be taking the MTA and other alternative means of transportation more readily than they are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who's your council member?
Mr. Weezar.
Is Mr. Weezar your council member?
Yes.
Have you spoken to him about this?
Well, it's more general. It's Reyes, Weezar, but we're looking at trying to take the Wilshire bus route and apply it to Huntington.
Very good. Thank you very much. Colleagues, with your consent, we would like to take item 1, 2, 3, and 4, since there are no public comment cards, and put them on consent. If there's a problem with that, we'll certainly pull it out. Do I have a motion to take 1, 2, 3, and 4? Do we need to read them technically?
They're all speed limits. I think we've continued a few of those, but I can read them if you'd like. Item 1 is a speed limit on Hatteras between Hazeltine and Sepulveda. Item 2 is a speed limit increase on Arleta Avenue between Devonshire Street and Roscoe Boulevard. Item number 3
Shelton Street from Glen Oaks Boulevard to
Roscoe. And then item 4 is the speed limit increase along Hollywood Way between the city limits of Burbank and Glen Oaks Boulevard.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Labange made a motion to move forward with. Do I have a second? Okay. It's unanimous, Mr. Parks. Okay. 4 of the 5 members are here, just for the record. We have Mr. Parks, Mr. Labange, and Mr. Koretz here, so there are 4 of us, more than a quorum. And thank you, gentlemen, for putting them on consent. I just want to make an announcement, and frankly, it's really up to anybody here in the room because nobody really got much notice, no notice, frankly. It has to do with the bridge, which is a separate item.
That's item number 7, which is a Board of Public Works report relative to the North Spring Street Viaduct and Rehabilitation Project.
Yeah, and just for those folks that are here for that, just as courtesy, I will tell you that I spoke to Ed Reyes yesterday, who's in Washington. He's at the National League of Cities. He's on the executive committee of the National League of Cities, and he's in a meeting. And he would like very much for me to continue this item so he could obviously come back and deal with it. He has different points of views and so on and so forth, but it was too late to notify you. So what we could do with item 7 is those who really feel they must speak on it, we will keep that item on the agenda and we will go forward with it. But if you can appreciate the fact, no action will be taken by this committee today, but it will be continued so that the issue is clarified and explained and dealt with by Mr. Reyes. Is there somebody here from his district office? Would you want to come up and make a comment or two? But it's up to the collective sensing. If you still want to do all that, we will leave it on the agenda item to do it. Maria, is it okay for me to just pull her out like that?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Susan Wong with Councilmember Reyes' office. And yes, we do concur. We would like to continue the item for 30 days to allow BOE and City Attorney and our office with the Conservancy a time to discuss some of the issues that remain on some of the concerns that have been brought up by the Conservancy.
Great. And my colleague did say, Ed Reyes said to me that he thought maybe a joint hearing of Public Works and Transportation might be the best strategy at that point when he comes back. But I'm going to defer out of great respect for him on that issue. But just by a show of hands, how many still want to speak on the subject at this meeting? Okay, five folks want to do that issue. Does anybody mind if I go out of order and do it?
No, I think we should go ahead and...
Is it okay? All right, would the 5 come on up? And we'll go through that for the record's sake. This is item number...
Item number 7.
7. Officially, Board of Public Works report relative to the North Spring Street Viaduct and Rehabilitation Project. Okay. Okay. Hello. You can start with your name, please.
Chair Rosendahl and members of the committee, I just wanted to ask for permission to translate for Kathy Ortega.
Perfectly fine. Your name?
Kathy Ortega.
Great. You're up, Kathy.
Ok, mi nombre es Kathy Ortega. Yo vivo en la comunidad de William Mead Housing Projects.
My name is Kathy Ortega and I live in the William Mead Housing Project.
Y mi preocupación por el puente primero es que yo quiero que tengan un poco de consideración con nuestros residentes.
My major concern with the bridge is that they take a little bit of consideration into the residents that live in the area.
Porque tenemos personas que están inválidas en silla de ruedas, otros que están ciegos.
We have people who are handicapped in wheelchairs, people who are blind in the area.
Y tienen que cruzar por el puente que es para nosotros es un monumento histórico, cultural y muy preservado y lo queremos conservar intacto como está.
And so they have to cross this bridge, and for us, this is a historic cultural monument. There's a lot of history there that we want to preserve and keep intact as it is today.
Y yo pienso que tenemos otras alternativas que podemos tomar para no mover el puente de nada.
And I feel that there are alternatives that we can take a look at instead of moving this bridge as it is proposed now.
Y también tenemos, en la mañana lo usamos, nuestros hijos lo usan para transportación, para ir a la escuela.
Our children use this as transportation to go to school.
Y nuestra gente que va a trabajar de aquel lado de Lincoln Heights también. Y para nosotros sería problema cruzar por la Main, por las vías del tren.
And then people who come in from Lincoln Heights as well, so it would be a problem to cross in through Maine.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hello. My name is Teal Hathaway. I am not a public speaker, so I will read.
You're just fine.
Thank you. My name is Teal Hathaway, and I'm an artist living and working in Lincoln Heights. For the last 3 years, I've been researching, studying, and painting representations of the historic bridges over the Los Angeles River through downtown. I have also had the privilege to exhibit these paintings, and through this process, I have discovered how deeply diverse members of our communities care for these examples of monumental architecture. Councilman Ed Reyes mentioned in a presentation a few weeks ago that Los Angeles has a particular dearth of cultural monuments compared to other major metropolitan areas. This is because Angelenos have never been able to agree on a common identity. I have come to understand that in Los Angeles, architectures are the only genuinely shared cultural monuments. As our communities evolve, significant architectures become the icons in which everyone takes pride, relating people of varied races, economic statuses, and cultural backgrounds. I suspect the reason that all of you are sitting here is because, like me, you care about Los Angeles. I understand the nature of pushing through a project while funds are available. I also understand why the proposed alternate of a parallel foot and cycle bridge is not a viable option for some purposes. I suspect the $5 million sought to be obtained is expressly for the implementation of bridge and highway improvement, meaning automobile and mass transport traffic. The proposal is to widen the bridge solely for sidewalks and bicycle lanes. As far as I can tell, that's a dirty game of pool with state funds.
That's a what?
Dirty game of pool. Demolish this bridge, and you demolish yet another piece of the fragile puzzle which unites Angelenos in a common identity. The Los Angeles River may be a drainage ditch to many, but this is our river running through our neighborhoods and traversed by beautifully crafted bridges which our fathers and grandfathers built. This issue is not about your job, it is about your conscience and your vested identity as an Angeleno. To replace Depression-era bridges with Recession-era highways is foolish. To lose any of these historic landmark bridges would and will be a travesty, but to lose any of them needlessly would be shameful. I hope you will choose to uphold the historic integrity of Los Angeles' heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You did a great job on it. Please.
Hi, my name's Meredith Hackelman, and I'm a bike commuter and a citizen of LA. And I want to urge you to preserve the North Spring Street Viaduct as a historic and cultural monument. And I think I would like to urge you also to build a separate pedestrian cyclist bridge alongside the existing bridge, which will enhance connectivity and safety for the communities of Lincoln Heights, Chinatown, between the LA State Historic Park and Albion Park, which is being developed. And I think this gives us a really great opportunity to prove our green strategies that we're putting forth, and also to create another way of transportation besides just moving cars around.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, too.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Mike Bueller, Director of Advocacy with the Los Angeles Conservancy. After nearly 4 years of inaction on this project, the Bureau of Engineering is now asking the city to recommend approval of a deeply flawed environmental impact report, or risk losing state matching funds. Make no mistake, the current proposal to nearly double the width of the North Spring Street Viaduct while providing no additional traffic capacity will destroy its eligibility as a historic cultural monument. The EIR for the North Spring Street project is being processed at a lightning speed, with the final EIR issued only 3 weeks after the close of public comments on the draft. After circulating the notice of preparation in 2006, there is no explanation as to why it took nearly 4 years to complete the draft EIR with little or no communication with the public over that time. CEQA guidelines clearly require that a range of alternatives be considered in the EIR capable of substantially lessening the project's significant environmental impacts. Despite this clear mandate under CEQA, the EIR for the North Spring Street project does not include a single alternative that maintains the viaduct's historic status. This is a glaring and inexcusable omission. As early as 2006, the Conservancy proposed an alternative that would provide a standalone pedestrian bicycle bridge that would bypass the existing historic bridge. A similar approach is being used on the historic Riverside Zoo Drive Bridge. The Conservancy has repeatedly asked for copies of any studies that support BOE's finding that a standalone pedestrian bridge is infeasible, and none have been provided to date. I urge the committee to direct staff to include a preservation alternative in the EIR for detailed study. Although we appreciate the extra time that we've been afforded for that dialogue, only detailed analysis in an EIR will be considered a meaningful consideration of a preservation option and will potentially cure the defects in the EIR. Also, I wanted to bring your attention to this chart in the final EIR, Table 1-1 on page 1-13, which was the initial screening of all the alternatives considered by the Bureau of Engineering. Strategy V5 is the alternative that would build a standalone pedestrian bridge. And to the extent that BOE staff has said that that alternative would not be eligible for funding, I note, and I highlighted it there for you, that that alternative scored 4 out of 5, the same score that the proposed alternative before you scored in terms of funding eligibility.
Great, thank you very much for that. And I am going to ask staff to respond to what they've heard here. You'll be pleased that there are options that staff is thinking about that will go more public as time goes on, but have faith that it's going to go in the right direction. Dr. Clyde Williams.
Good afternoon. Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. We're quite concerned about this because we also went through the 6th Street viaduct widening and rehabilitation. That is, knock it down and rebuild it. However, in this one, it's a sloppy job. And all we do is wait for you to certify it. Once it's certified, then other actions can be taken. One response was, well, FEMA isn't involved. The 100-year flood won't affect us because we have no housing. They didn't consider the fact that the bridge replacement will interfere with the 100-year flood. They said, oh, we use SCAGs. Well, SCAGs does not consider the Cornfields Arroyo Seco specific plan yet because it's not part of the official documents. Therefore, traffic. Oh, by the way, this is supposed to be for major highway class 2. However, even the document admits that, hey, it won't meet major highway class 2 width requirement. It needs another 14 feet of width on it. It's not wide enough to meet the requirements of Caltrans. So how can they say on one side, well, we need to widen it, but we're not going to widen it as far as we need to go? So they say the planning department has allowed for it. Well, yeah, the planning department wants 1 lane each way, whereas DOT wants 2 lanes each way. So guess what we get? We get a major highway class 2 almost. So we don't need to worry about planning department. And overall, it's inadequate, it's incomplete, it's insufficient, and it does not allow for other engineering solutions to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments on that. Could we have staff come up real quickly and give us a synopsis of the presentation I had rather quickly yesterday that outlined what alternatives and what options we're looking at? And I'd also like to ask the historical guy to come on up and make a comment as well.
Mr. Bernstein.
Yes, Mr. Bernstein. He just, he looks like an ancient relic, doesn't he?
I know. Mr. Bernstein, you got to understand, he sometimes says he's the former cable guy, so it's affection that he
Yeah, he used to be on my show a lot, so he's a dear friend.
Good.
And I appreciate that. And for everybody in the room to get a better appreciation of where we are right now, could you please give us an update of what we discussed yesterday, what the options will be presented in the next meeting?
Okay. Good afternoon. Julie Sauter with the Bureau of Engineering. I was previously heard, this is for the North Stream Viaduct and Rehabilitation Project. It's in Chinatown as you cross over the LA River into Lincoln Heights. The recommended proposal for this project is basically a seismic retrofit project. It also will upgrade some of the deficiencies of the bridge, substandard lanes, no medians, as well as providing pedestrian sidewalks and a bike lane in both paths of travel. Currently, there is only one sidewalk, which is less than maybe 3.5 feet on the north side. By implementing this project, we would be able to get the funding to provide the pedestrian as well as the bike lanes. As part of this project, we did take consideration into the character-defining elements of the bridge, trying to maintain the aesthetic features. We do have a board here. And some of the character-defining elements that we're replicating for the new bridge, it's a widening.
Turn around and let the audience see it as well.
So which is the arch spans, the spandrels, the railing, the light poles, maintaining the aesthetic feature of the existing bridge. I do recognize that there is a lot of concern about the width of the bridge, but that is to bring it up to the current standards as imposed by, Caltrans and the federal government. Overall, the total project cost is $48 million. 80% of it is provided by the HVP. We are seeking right now.
HVP?
Highway Bridge Program.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We got a LA Times reporter wants to get it down. Let's get the right facts.
As part of securing the Highway Bridge Program money, we do need to get a local match. And what we're using for that is the state 1B funding. And that's some of the discussion that has been transpired, is that originally we had a deadline by July to secure that funding. In recent conversations with the state, they did give us an extension to the end of August to certify the EIR.
Which gives us time to work on any revisions and plans. Thank you, state, for giving us that flexibility.
Correct. I think there was some mention about the seismic retrofit only. There is funds that are specific to the seismic retrofit only, which we would do, which would just not improve the bridge itself, just make it safe. The balance of the funding, though, does require that we do bring it up to current standards, and that is the balance of the highway bridge money that, that's in question. So, let's see. We have had some dialogue over the course of the years with the community, with the biking community. We've had many smaller informal meetings directly with the CD1, Department of Transportation and Planning, to go over all of the different pros and cons of the alternatives. Currently, we were again, clarification from the federal that we would not be able to secure all of the funding for a separate pedestrian bridge. So if we only seismically upgrade the existing bridge and try to build a separate ped bridge, we would not be able to utilize the federal highway bridge program funding.
But there might be other angles we could look at, because I'm not going to talk out of school, but I am chair of this committee. I am strongly in favor of a separate bridge for the pedestrian bicycle world, and leave this bridge as intact as the historical preservationists would suggest. That's my personal opinion. We'll have to go through the dynamics of the group and the politics and the discussions, but I have no problem with trying to figure out how we could secure those funds if, in fact, you have an alternative. Have you put an alternative together that does show a separate potential opportunity than just the one bridge?
The one bridge was discussed in the EIR, but because of the funding eligibility, it was not carried forward as an alternative.
Mm-hmm. But we talked about yesterday, didn't we?
Right. The only additional information I'd add to it is we reached out to our colleagues at DOT, the bicycle coordinators, and they strongly are strongly in favor of our project, which puts a bike lane on both sides. A separate ped bike bridge would require bicyclists to cross traffic and they feel that that is not the best option for bicycle commuters. So there is a discussion that has gone on that we will continue to pursue that.
And further, have a dialogue with the preservation community, the biking community, the council district, to go over how we arrived at a recommendation and the pros and cons of our recommended alternative, as well as the other alternatives that we are being asked to look at.
Very good, very good. What I'd like to do, did you fill out a card when you just came in for this? No, okay, all right. Could you react to all of this? Tell us who you are officially and the position.
I'm the historic guy. Yeah, it's Ken Bernstein with the Office of Historic Resources in the City Planning Department. I'm here today really representing the Cultural Heritage Commission of the city, which is the commission that oversees our city historic cultural monuments. And the commission has taken a very strong stance on this project and in support of the preservation of our LA River bridges. The commission did adopt unanimously last week a letter that has been communicated to the committee. I hope you have copies of the letter. We have additional copies we can hand out, stating its opposition to the project as proposed. Because the EIR does acknowledge that the project would result in the loss of historic cultural monument status for the North Spring Street Bridge. And we do not take lightly the loss of any of our historic cultural monuments in the city. Indeed, it has been about 25 years since we've fully lost any building or structure that is designated as a historic cultural monument. We are good stewards of our historic landmarks in the city. And this bridge is one of 14 designated historic cultural monuments along the LA River. It is a centerpiece of what is a remarkable ensemble of historic bridges. We have, I think you all know, but many don't appreciate that we have one of the finest collections of historic river bridges of any city in the country and perhaps beyond. And these bridges, 11 of them just recently achieved historic cultural monument status. And of course, they are really part of the legacy of our colleagues at Public Works and BOE, the association with Merrill Butler, the pioneering engineer, and this infrastructure and public works legacy of the city that we are all stewards of. And as a result, the Commission has been very dismayed by how this project has unfolded. We have been working with our colleagues at BOE, and obviously we are all part of the city family, but the Cultural Heritage Commission and our office have a different perspective, and we very much welcome this continuance to provide the time, we hope, with your direction, to develop a meaningful alternative that would retain the eligibility of this bridge. The EIR as it now stands, we believe lacks any full analysis of any alternative, and that's been acknowledged. None of the alternatives in this EIR would retain the historic eligibility of the bridge. And we believe there are other alternatives that either would represent a more moderate widening to minimize the loss of the historic fabric of this bridge, or in the letter that was adopted by the Cultural Heritage Commission, the Commission has suggested two possibilities, two alternative configurations of standalone pedestrian bicycle bridges. We have worked with our colleagues at BOE. There is such a project we've been working with them on in Councilmember Labange's district near the zoo at the Riverside at Zoo Drive Bridge, where there were also historic issues with the historic cultural monument. And in that case, it does appear feasible to pursue a standalone bridge alternative there. So we very much welcome the time. We appreciate the continuance and would welcome your direction to all of us as to how to develop an alternative that would allow a project to move forward, to correct some of the deficiencies, allow for bicycle and pedestrian connection, but also preserve the legacy of our LA River bridges.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for your presentation, and also DOT for their presentation, and BOE and everything else. But this is to put it out there for people to appreciate. I look forward to your leadership and the Commission on helping find alternatives or options or whatever. I'm open for the whole thing. And Richard, to let you know that what we decided, because Ed Reyes, God bless you, is in Washington at the National League of Cities.
Blessing me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilman. Yes, and that's where he is, and he asked to continue the item so we can discuss it further. But we did give the public as well as the city staff opportunity to discuss the issue.
Just a couple of questions. I'm a strong supporter of the bridge movement and was very involved when the National Park Service did a survey of the bridge. Merle Butler was the deputy city engineer who created all these bridges, including some others in the city that make a big difference. My interest here is to ask you at the Bureau of Engineering, was the North Broadway Bridge, or Buena Vista Bridge as it's called, was that widened at all in previous times, which is about 10 years ago? This is between Pasadena Avenue and Elysian Park. Because if you look at your records and see, the only reason I want to say, if you ride your bike on North Spring Street, you say a lot of Hail Marys both going up and going down, not to make the grade, but to make it across. Right. And there needs to be some special way. And the greatest thing in Mr. Reyes's championship of the river is the acquisition of the dairy there to expand the park in that area. Our worst bridge in the city is Main Street Bridge, which really got Clark Robbins, who's now retired, to focus in a great way to bring these bridges back. The question I want to ask you, Deborah, excuse me, Paul, all we're doing here is adding this here. The bridge is going to look the same?
We're actually widening the bridge.
I got that, but from a look, from a historic look, you're just, everything's going to look the same. It's just like the First Street Bridge, excuse me, Paul, which is widened. Is that lost historic monument status?
No, the distinction there, First Street Bridge, one half of the bridge was widened, one side was left intact, and the historic features were left in place. The reason the EIR and BOE staff, and correct me if I'm wrong, the EIR for this project acknowledged that the bridge would lose its historic eligibility, in part because there will be widening on both sides. The dramatic increase in profile from a 50-foot bridge to a 90-foot wide bridge, together with the loss of the historic features of the bridge, will result in its losing its historic eligibility.
But what other historic features other than, doesn't show any loss, it's the same picture but photoshopped out?
You would have a different view if you were looking from atop the bridge and seeing the change in
if you were in the blimp.
profile.
If you were in the blimp.
In the blimp?
Yeah, if you're on top.
Or walking or driving across the bridge.
There's still going to be center median?
There is not currently a center median. There would be one added.
I think it's key what Mr. Reyes gave us some advice on this here. I think safety is real important, and these bridges are real important to restore and save. They were part of the City Beautiful movement in the 1920s that really turned Los Angeles from a smaller town to a great town, which brought us the Olympic Games in '32. So I welcome it. I would ask you to look at your research recently, because I know Mike Hernandez, a previous council member for the district, championed the Buena Vista Bridge or the Broadway Bridge, and I think there was a little widening there, maybe not to the extent, but it is important to have that passage in a safe way, or figure out, and then you have another bridge up at Riverside Drive in Figueroa that you're going to redo?
Yeah, and we were able to do that because the existing bridge had the width that allowed us to upgrade it without losing its elevation.
Just to let you know, I have to make this. In 1990, when Metrolink came to be, we lost the river access on the south side of the river due to a bridge. So it's very important, whatever we do the right thing for the next 100 years. And access to the businesses below are very important. So we look forward to a robust conversation and input from Mr. Reyes and his team to help make the right decision for the river in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I might add that Tom is our historian in residence, and the truth is he knows more about it than practically anybody else in the city. But what was intriguing with your comment is if we can keep the historical cultural designation, which is one of our goals, we have to find a way to make that happen, and at the same time meet the other needs of the pedestrian and the bicyclist, of course. And so if that can be done with the existing bridge modified in certain ways that keeps the status and allows that to happen, that might be the win-win-win, but maybe it might require another option that you were suggesting as well. So if
we're very committed, obviously the planning department is very committed to the bicycle access. I should mention I now wear multiple hats in planning, and I'm also overseeing the citywide planning staff that is working with DOT on the bike plan, and of course our staff is very committed to bicycle access across and around the LA River. So.
Okay, so at this point, please.
If we leave the graffiti, do we still lose the historical designation?
You can deal with the graffiti, absolutely.
Oh, that's
Very
okay.
good.
Maybe we can extend it to the rail in front.
Yeah, Mr. Kretz.
Actually, I thought we had to keep the graffiti to maintain the historic designation.
Our
No, I
committee-
just want to say, just my thought on it, I would err towards protecting the historic nature of the bridge above the ability to provide the access to pedestrians and bicyclists, even though hopefully we can do both. I wouldn't support a solution that doesn't protect the historic nature of the bridge.
We're getting a consensus here that historical, cultural aspect is key. We also appreciate the fact of the cyclists and the pedestrians, and maybe it is one bridge, maybe it's another option with it, but there'll be healthy discussions between the departments. The most important administrative thing is I don't want to lose that money. So if we're going to get up against the clock, we need to know that earlier enough to see if there's more flexibility in that, if more discussions need to happen. So we will continue this item until we put together a joint committee meeting, and we will let the public know. And I really want to thank everybody for their participation. Any other colleague with any additional
Just
comments?
save the 6th Street Bridge, too. I talked to Chacha Di Gregorio from Greece. She loves that bridge. She wants to see you save it, too. Thank you.
Okay, so we continue this item. Thank you very much. Okay, there's some colleague issues and timing, so let me just, if we could, Maria, take item number 6, and I know that Mr. Parks has a question on item number 6. What is item number 6?
Item number 6 is the CEO report and DOT request to execute a second one-year contract with Ilium Associates for the continued marketing and advertising of the city's transit services.
I just had one request. Could the council office be put on the distribution list for any marketing? I don't know if we've ever seen any, or if we saw it, we didn't recognize it. So that's all I ask, is whatever they publish, that the council office get access to.
Sure. Any other colleagues with any comments about item number 6? Do I have a motion to move forward with it? So moved. Feeling of the committee? Okay, unanimous. We will approve that and move forward with item number 6. Which leaves us item number 5.
Item number 5 is the city attorney report to alternative ordinances amending the municipal code to change the definition of oversized vehicles and to modify the procedure to establish the parking restrictions.
And also, there is a special item number 8 that we will do after this. Glenn Bailey has pulled out a card.
Right, do you want us to come up
Please,
here?
no, come on up now, you're up. And give us an update of what we're talking about, and then we will take public comment afterwards.
All good. My name is Valerie Flores. I'm an assistant city attorney, and I have Judy Reel with me today. She's a deputy city attorney with our office who worked on the ordinance.
Amir Sadati with the LA Department of Transportation.
Okay.
We have prepared a report and submitted it, and we took a somewhat unusual step of preparing 2 alternative ordinances. And first, let me explain why we did that. Council directed our office to draft an ordinance amending the oversized vehicle ordinance to specifically address an issue involving the definition of what constitutes an oversized vehicle. When we met with LADOT pursuant to Rule 38, LADOT staff raised some very good issues and had some concerns we thought merited attention, and we know that the need for oversized vehicle restrictions is pressing in some areas of town, including Councilmember Rosendall's district. And so we believe that if we presented 2 ordinances for you, it might speed the process along in terms of adopting an ordinance that would be most effective. I'll describe briefly the 2 different ordinances so you have an idea.
Come with the one you want. Okay?
Okay. Well, the one that LADOT requested, and again, we believed that it made sense, is Alternative B. And both Alternative A and Alternative B do change the definition in the current oversized vehicle ordinance. Currently, the ordinance says, defines an oversized vehicle as exceeding a certain length and a certain height. And what was discovered around the city is that many of vehicles that are causing congestion on streets and vehicles in which people seem to be living in the vehicle are actually only meet one of the criteria, either the length or the height. So we did change the ordinance, and now an oversized vehicle is defined as any ordinance exceeding 22 feet in length or 7 feet in height. And it's an or now, not an and. So both ordinances do that. The difference in Alternative B, the main difference is it allows two avenues for the establishment of oversized vehicle restrictions on any given block. It allows, but both alternatives in B allow public input and they allow LADOT input. So under Alternative B, a block can receive oversized vehicle restriction posting signs either through the council passing an ordinance, which of course would require Rule 38 consultation with DOT, or a single council member can ask LADOT in advance to do a study of and do a block-by-block analysis of the actual need in any given area for oversized vehicle restrictions, and then that single council member could, through a resolution passed by the entire council, establish oversized vehicle restrictions on any given block. There was one other change that LADOT... Oh.
Any given block?
Yes.
By community or...
It could be multiple blocks at a time. Under the old ordinance, by the way, you could establish oversized vehicle restrictions on a portion of a block too, but LADOT believes that that might lead to interblock disputes, some parts of the block wanting it and some not. So by requiring a whole block to be posted one, it gives, I think, it's more fair to oversized vehicles. They know, they have more assurance of where the line starts and stops. But also, a whole block would have to decide that this was a good idea in terms of working with the council office or the council to get the restrictions. There is one other change, and that is that the former ordinance made an exception. Well, the old ordinance has a permit application process, so if a resident has an oversized vehicle, let's say they are returning from a camping trip and they want to load or unload, or they have family members coming from Pennsylvania who are going to drive out in an RV and stay for the weekend with them in the RV. There is a process under the old ordinance and remains in the both current ordinances where residents can apply for an overnight parking permit for a fee for these oversized vehicles. The Alternative B, again, what a change requested by LADOT was to remove the restriction in the former ordinance for a requirement that the permit only be granted for loading and unloading of an oversized vehicle. So Alternative B would allow for the family member from Pennsylvania in the RV to come and visit the relative for a few days and stay there. So those are the main differences between version A and version B, and I'm happy to, or Judy's happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Did you want to add anything to it?
No.
How
Did I
about
miss
you?
anything?
No, good. She did a great job.
Thank you. No, just to add to what Ms. Flores said, we worked with the city attorney's office. We've worked on this for, I think, quite a while, and we appreciate the fact that we have this opportunity for this committee and council to get the ordinance adopted, because that's what I think is needed. Instead of us coming back and you instructing them to go back and fix the ordinance, they provided an ordinance that works, and we're hoping that the committee would approve the ordinance B, Alternative B.
It would have been nice if we just had B and didn't have to think anymore.
Well, we're very careful when you give us instructions to comply with your instructions. So.
Yeah, okay. So the point is that DOT looked at the initial ordinance and then came up with these modifications that...
Hold the sign up.
That works. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I think Councilmember Rosendahl, you had asked for like a typical sign, so
Yeah.
this is what a typical sign would look like. No parking 2 a.m. to 6 p.m., vehicles over 7 feet high or 22 feet long, except by permit.
Okay, turn it around so the audience can see it as well. That's the way it would look. Okay. Council colleagues. Mr. Alacon.
Does the definition under A or B conflict with any state provisions in the vehicle code?
No.
And I'm sorry, you said that the relatives coming in for a few days would be acceptable under A or B. Which one?
Only under B, I'm sorry.
Only under
A
B.
has a loading or unloading requirement, so the relatives wouldn't be able to come and stay for the weekend.
But people would have to apply for a permit.
Right.
And does the
But even the
definition-
permit,
does
even
the
if they have...
definition that we've created change any definitions of oversized vehicle in any other part of our codes?
Well, the oversized vehicle ordinance is a citywide ordinance.
Mhm.
But in order to actually establish the oversized vehicle restrictions on any block, first LADOT would do a study, and you probably, as a council member, want to make sure that the residents on that block...
But we don't
are
have any
safe.
other laws relative to oversized vehicles where the definition, the use of the term oversized vehicle is used?
No, not that we're aware of.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, anytime, sure.
Another one?
Yeah. What if you're...
Finish, Mr. Alacon?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Good. I thought you would finish because you're a smart guy.
He knows me a lot.
In my district on Riverside Drive, we have restrictions, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 2 to 4. That's not a problem.
Those are overnight parking.
Overnight.
Which is applying to all vehicles.
All vehicles, so that's okay there.
This is, as mentioned by Councilmember Alacon, it's a definition that's being used as for the purpose of an oversized vehicle.
So, but you recommend B,
Yes.
and you gave us A and B.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because
Great.
you asked for A, so we're giving you A, and we're also giving you B because
B.
we thought you might want to consider B.
Good.
But you
And-
all have family with motorhomes.
And what if your family's not from Pennsylvania, but from Arizona?
Let's not go there, Justin. The Brown Act will preclude me from going into that discussion today.
Okay, but yeah, before Mr. Koretz speaks, when we had our meeting, kind of the city attorney's office, I don't want to put words in your mouth, find option B more compatible as DOT does, or do you have a concern?
No, we didn't have a concern with B. We believe B is legal, and that's our job. But we also, just as draftspeople, thought it made sense as well. So that's why, we're responsive to our client, and we also wanted to give you options.
Very responsive. Mr. Krebs?
Yes, I have an item that is tangentially related, but perhaps should be addressed with the same item, which is the catering truck movement, which has taken off in Los Angeles. And I appreciate the value they can add to our culinary landscape. But having said that, we've been getting complaints about food trucks that will park for an extended period of time in front of the same residential areas and homes, leave a lot of trash and mess, and generally make themselves a nuisance. And I wonder whether there's any way to address this as well, even though it is not a late night use. It's basically a daytime, but nuisance use as well.
Can we begin this, or would that be a separate ordinance strategy?
Right. The ordinance you're considering today would just limit the parking of oversized vehicles from 2 to 6 a.m., so probably wouldn't address the catering truck issue, because generally I think they would park while people were awake and purchasing food. But we have been working with other city staff, other council districts, to look at the issue of mobile food vending. We've also been working in this task force or working group with representatives from the county because the county has health licensing even for mobile food trucks. So we are working on the issue in the city attorney's office, and if this gets agendized for this committee, we'd be happy to come back and give you a report on that.
Okay. And I'm going to make that motion as it relates to commercial. Paul has a problem in residential. We got to look at that issue, and I'll look for your guidance to help draft that. Thank you, Ms.
That'll be a
Flores.
motion on both commercial and residential neighborhoods about the food trucks.
And the last thing, since you're throwing things in there, we have problems with cars for sale on streets. You're working on that, too?
Yeah, Judy and I are
Right.
also, again, meeting with the county, and they are slightly ahead of us, but
I got you. We're going to move the agenda. We're good.
on that as well.
Thank you very much. You caught it. You said you were helpful, and you truly are. Thank you.
Okay, we made the motion. Mr. LeBlanc, say it formally again.
We're going to have a formal motion on Friday in council as it relates to a report to the Transportation Commission on the impact of vehicles that sell in parking spaces, whether metered or unmetered, in residential or commercial zones, and what could be done to deal with that issue. And dealing with state law and the recent lawsuit that we had.
Do we need to submit just a point of information that through the council chambers, or can we just do that?
Well, I'd like to do it to the council chambers, Mr. Chair, because the city of Portland dealt with this issue, and we want to look at that and some other municipalities.
Do you have a new motion coming in, or?
Yeah, the one that you drafted, I'm enhancing the ideas that you got me going on.
Okay.
So it's
All
good.
right,
Thanks,
okay,
Maria.
all right. Okay, now we'll have public comment. Thank you so much. Stay in the edges to hear what the public has to say. At this point, Mr. Allen. I like him. You like him? Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, that was a formal motion to adopt B, Ordinance B. Okay.
But we can't act on it until the public speaks.
Right.
Public comment. And, okay, great. Come on up, public. Sally LaBouffe, did I say that right? Okay, hi. Mark Ryovac, Stuart Oscar, Spencer Burt, Glenn Bailey. Let's see if I forgot anybody in that moment. Did I? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Richard.
Okay, we'll start with you, sir.
I was afraid of that.
Oh, if you want to wait, we'll go with the other end first.
Okay, that sounds good.
Fine. Go ahead, Stuart.
Okay, Stuart Oscars, Venice, California resident. I want to thank Mr. Rosendahl. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the city attorney for taking this on. It's really the basis. We're changing one word here. As you heard, we're changing from and to or. And I've been involved in parking issues in Venice for over 5 years, and that one change will help the Venice parking situation dramatically, because I did a survey about 2 years ago of all the vehicles that are oversized, and it is really true. There's like this cutoff where vehicles were built to 21 feet, and it's kind of wondering why the first ordinance didn't include that, but we'll let that go. But it just would help us a lot in Venice to free up the parking for the residents. That's what's really sad here, is these vehicles are blocking residents from parking on their block. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Ryvek. I'm the president of the Venice Stakeholders Association, and we have been working with the council office on this issue for some time. The LAPD specifically has asked for this tool. In fact, I was in a meeting with our new captain of Pacific Division who said, when is the oversized vehicle ordinance revisions coming through? Because they need a bright line to be able to remove. We have over 200 plus RVs, campers, and huge buses in which people are living, renting out space, and this will give them the bright line that they need to be able to cite and move these folks on, hopefully to either a program that Mr. Rosendahl is working on or get them into proper campgrounds. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sally LaBeouf. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for being here, everybody. I am in support of the parking restrictions for oversized vehicles in our neighborhoods. I drive down North Venice Boulevard to go home, and there is a RV that's permanently parked, never moves, with a stair that's retracted into the street. I think it's stuck there. I always forget, and I get there, and I have to swerve over, and I almost hit a car almost every time. Anyway, I think it's important for the health and safety of others to have these restrictions on these oversized vehicles, and they're blocking visibility as well, and I think they should be parked in RV parks and not parked on the street that I have to drive down every day.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. Sarah?
Hi, my name is Spencer Burt, and I have vehicles parked in front of my street that stay there all week, move on street sweeping day. One's like a 30-foot bus.
What street are you on?
5th and Westminster. And the reason the bus, at one time I asked the parking officials, the enforcement people, about the length of the bus, because commercial vehicles cannot be parked in residential areas if they're over 22 feet at any time unless there's activity. And they said, well, because this bus had a regular, whatever the regular license plate, it wasn't applicable. But one question I have from hearing the people before us speak was with this permit. It's like, how long and how often can one get a permit? Because I know for sure that people will abuse that privilege. And so I think you need to somehow, be able to rectify that. If somebody has it's their, their relative there, and so then they just keep getting a permit every day, or...
Want to answer that? Sure. If you don't mind, we'll have her answer it right now.
That would be great.
Maria, that's okay, right? Okay, please.
There will be a fee for the permit, so it would discourage people from using the permit process to establish permanent resident parking. And also, you can tell about the history, but it was our understanding that in the history of the permitting process, there had been no applications for permits.
That's correct. So it's a $10 per night permit fee, and you can only get it for 3 nights.
Okay, excellent.
Very good.
But in the few years, we have not had a single permit.
Well, I'm thinking specifically this one vehicle that's in front of my place. They also have an SUV that they go to work in, and anyway. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I think it'll solve the problem.
Thank you for coming down to City Hall. Appreciate it very much. Our last speaker on the subject is
Glenn Bailey, City of Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee Chair, and although our committee has not dealt specifically with the issue of oversized vehicle parking, I have heard enough of the Transportation Committee meetings during the past number of months to have known the concerns in the Venice community. But I want to bring a little bit different dimension to your attention and ask that you consider this, and that is you're dealing with the length and the height, but you haven't addressed the width. And if you have the legal ability to deal with the width, I would ask that you do so. And let me explain why. First of all, we have a city ordinance now that prohibits vehicles from blocking our bicycle lanes. However, as you know, with anything, it requires personnel to enforce them. And this would still require that. Some of the bicycle lanes are installed with only 7 feet, that's substandard, but 7 feet of width for parking of vehicles, which will accommodate a normal passenger vehicle. But anything bigger than that will extend into the bicycle lane. The standard width is 8 feet. So some of these vehicles that we're discussing would exceed that, and I realize a lot of these concerns are addressed on residential streets, but this could be a powerful tool to help us address issues where we do have bicycle lanes, either standard or substandard in terms of the parking area width. And also we have not just lanes, but we have areas in the city where we have designated bikeways, bike routes, where it is dangerous, where there's not actual pain lanes, and therefore it's recommended or designated for cyclists to use them, but becomes more dangerous where these over-width vehicles, I'll use that term, width vehicles park, because then they have to swerve out into not swerve, but they're out further than they may ought to be, and you could have this protection by adding width and designating those areas where it makes sense to do so, and that's my request. Thank you.
That's a very intriguing point. Thank you very much. Does DOT want to comment on that?
Good afternoon. Just a very
Name for the record.
brief. Of 23 or so...
Your name for the record.
Pardon me? Oh, sure. Yadi Hashemi, LACD Department of Transportation. 23 or so local jurisdictions that have oversized vehicle ordinance or similar laws. The great majority of them restrict based on how long a vehicle is, how tall it is. We have two cities, that Costa Mesa and Glendale, that also include the width of the vehicle. But when we looked at this as we were discussing in preparation for making the changes to oversized, we realized that the great majority of cases where you have vehicles that are over 7 feet high or 22 feet long, you have already covered the issue of the width. So although it may be wise at some point to look at the possibility of covering a width dimension, but it really is not all that applicable in terms of the problems we are trying to resolve.
Okay, but it is a problem too. I will respectfully disagree, but the thing called dooring, a lady is driving the bicycle and somebody opens their door, they get nailed. Or, as he has also said, if the width is wide on a given street, that, becomes difficult for the bicycle to navigate safely. That is something of concern, both those aspects.
Right. I agree that in general we have a problem with our bike lanes and car doors open.
At this point, this is again an ordinance from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., so I'm not sure how many cyclists are out there at 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. opening doors, but your point is valid, but that needs to be looked at, I think, in the realm of daytime parking. But this is a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. to deal with a different issue.
And I would like that, and I'd like to put a motion in and put an agenda item on for this committee to discuss that issue going forward. So, Maria, let's move in that direction on that. Mr. Levant.
I move we accept the recommendation of the Department of Transportation of item B under the guidance of the city attorney.
Second. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
You got to split.
Me too.
Okay, great. It's unanimous. 4 of us here have voted in favor of it. Let's move this as quickly, if we can use the word forthwith, to the city council for final action by the council. Can we get a placement date, Maria, for when we can do that?
Not yet.
Okay, but we will get it as quickly as we can. Okay, all right, and we'll notify the public of that as soon as we get that notification date. It's okay. Is there any other new business?
We have the special item.
A special item? I'm sorry, there is a special item. I do need see you later. I do need the 3 of us here.
It's a Rosendahl Garcetti motion, item number 8, relative to instructing the Department of Transportation to amend its traffic study policies and procedures guidelines to require that bicycle and pedestrian intersection counts be included in any traffic study.
And we have one public comment card. Come on up, Mr. Glenn Bailey. Oh, sir, you have one too. Okay. I'm sorry, there's more than just him. Come on up, Jeremy Grant. Tony, just is that you? Okay, and Dr. Clyde Williams. Oh, great. Okay. All right. I apologize for not seeing these cards. We'll start with you, Mr. Bailey. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll start with you then.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tony Husai from Metro, the planning department. I work in the bike program. I wanted to speak in support of this action initiative and include bike and ped counts and traffic studies. There's definitely a lack of data for bicycling and pedestrian, and this would definitely help us in evaluating call for project applications for countywide projects that come to Metro for transportation funds. And it would also help to encourage strategies that we are looking at to reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases, and this kind of data would definitely be useful for that. So I just wanted to share that and support this motion.
Thank you very much for that. I totally agree with you. Sir, you're next.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Grant, a political activist for Bikeside LA. I'd like to thank you for bringing this motion forward, and I support this, including cyclists and pedestrians in all traffic studies. But counting is not just enough. We need to know what kind of activity each mode is doing. Are they simply walking from their parked car? Have they walked 12 blocks from home? We need to know these things. In addition to the type of activities, we need to know the demographics, the age, the interests, and we also need to ask, do they feel safe? Will they have suggestions on areas to work on? Would they bike or walk if things changed? We need to counting heads will just get you numbers, but engaging with people will actually get you solutions. Thank you.
Pretty thoughtful, I appreciate it. Somebody from staff here took a note on that, because I do want us to appreciate what he said. It makes a lot of sense. Dr. Williams.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. Major element in this whole combination came about 3 months ago when we did a review of the San Fernando road widening. It wasn't the cars, it wasn't the bicycles, which they forgot to consider. It wasn't the pedestrians, it was the buses. And when you look at, especially downtown or many other places, it's the buses, because they have to park or stop next to the intersection. And this causes a considerable amount of problem with any intersection. So please add buses along with bikes and pedestrians, because it's a critical element. Every time I stop on the bus here at Temple, I have to look around the bus in order to make sure nobody's coming through, both bicyclists and automobiles. So every intersection should have a level of service based upon, is it a bus stop? That's all.
Good point. DOT staffer took some notes on that. Appreciate it very much, Dr. Williams. You're up.
Thank you. Glenn Bailey, Bicycle Advisory Committee, also has not, since this motion was just introduced on Friday, we haven't met to give you official recommendations. But I am personally supportive of the effort and any effort that we can integrate bicycle and pedestrian consideration as transportation modes in any of our city procedures as equal partners in what's being looked at and the impacts, in this case, of development. My concern about studies, and I'm going to express it now and maybe I'll express it later on, is what's real important is the criteria for the studies being made. And as we learned on one of the speed limit studies on one of the streets bordering one of the largest universities in this city, the traffic study was done at dates and times that didn't fairly represent when the university was in normal operation. And to me, that's an invalid traffic study. In these types of traffic studies, this is same sort, there needs to be some fair criteria so that we're not, so it's a typical day, typical time, and especially when it's a situation where these so-called experts do a study on just over one day, there's things that can be happening. As it relates to cyclists, maybe it's a rainy day, whatever. There needs to be some criteria there, and it seems that ought to be vented within folks who would give some input in that. And on that note of input, and I appreciate the enthusiasm on this, but I am concerned that with something just introduced on Friday and then scheduled as a special meeting agenda, that there hasn't been the opportunity to disseminate this widely to the cycling community, and I don't want this to be set as a precedent for the future. I mean, this is a worthwhile effort, but I think the end does not justify the means if we're really looking at transparency and involvement. And that's why I truly and honestly ask that you please consider that we do allow that time. I obviously want things to happen as quickly as possible, but I don't want it to happen at the expense of thoughtful review and notice to those who are concerned.
I totally agree with you, and I'll certainly apologize to you. I don't know why there wasn't proper outreach and bringing everybody into the room. Staff, do you want to comment on that, or are we going to... I don't need to rush this through at all. I certainly would like your involvement, and I thought what Mr. Grant said, Jeremy Grant, was very meaningful. So could you just come on up and introduce yourself and meet with them and get whatever input that they have to offer, and any other group that is interested in this, and if it means we should continue this from the regular council agenda, if that becomes the situation, then we will. I certainly consider your input more important than my input on an issue like this that you write about.
Well, you wrote the motion, so I'm sure you gave it a lot of thought.
The timing of this is something that I appreciate what you just said.
Hi, I'm Tom Carranza with the LA DOT's Bureau of Planning. The motion directs us to revise our traffic study guidelines to require private firms to collect bike counts and pad counts in addition to vehicle counts. We agree, and the timing of this is perfect because we are in the process of updating our traffic study guidelines now. So in response to this motion, we could start requiring all studies to include this additional data immediately. We think it's a very important, especially in light of legislation such as, related to smart growth and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, that we need to start looking at all modes of travel, not just vehicles. So.
Totally agree. Okay, what I want to do, Mr. Bailey, because I appreciate what you just said, and I also, Mr. Grant, and your comment over there, we will not put this on the agenda for next week. We will hold on to it until you all feel comfortable that the input was appropriate and proper, and then we'll schedule it to the full council floor. But I do want to move it from committee so that we have it as a work in progress. But good points made. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions about this, and I don't know. Obviously, I understand the intention, which I think is great. What I don't completely understand is if we know whether we're getting great value for this. Because obviously a traffic study, if you find you've added a bunch of trips, you're going to back up traffic. If you double the number of pedestrians, you back up the sidewalk. Now, you also impact intersections, but the impact is much less, and it may be true for pedestrians as well. So my question is, what are the costs, and how does that compare to the value we actually get out of it? What are we actually doing with the data once we get it? Does this work better and have more value along transit corridors or other places? Those kinds of questions. Do we really know whether, even though it sounds like a great idea, whether we're actually getting usable value out of this?
But let me first address the cost of this. There is an incremental increase in cost. It's not borne on by the city. It's actually required of the applicant preparing the traffic study. And I've talked to a couple of the traffic counting firms yesterday, and what they say is that the cost could go up anywhere from 10% to 40%. And they're currently paying about $400 to count one intersection for a period of 6 hours. But again, the cost to count intersections is a really small percentage of the total cost of a traffic study. So there is a cost increase, but it's pretty small in light of the overall cost of the full traffic study.
I mean, I don't object to having developers pay additional costs if we know we're getting value. If we're not getting value, then we're just being business unfriendly and adding a cost and not seeing the result. So the question is, what is it used for? And are we basing this on other jurisdictions which have added these studies and had success, or are we the first of its kind?
Well, no, it's not the first of its kind, but the additional data that we collect will help us make better and more informed decisions when we assign traffic mitigation. Right now, using level of service as our performance measurement for street, it's solely car-centric. So if we know the transit usage, the number of buses, the number of bikes, number of pedestrians, it'll just make us better informed when evaluating mitigation measures.
What's a mitigation measure we might use as an example?
Well, for example, if a developer says, especially a mega project, wants to install, say, a bike lane on the street, we don't have a way of giving them credit for that. We only have a way of giving them credit if they're adding capacity to the street for vehicles. But if we know the number of bikes there, and if they can quantify what the mitigation benefit would be, then we could give them the mitigation credit they're looking for and assign it as a mitigation requirement for the project. The other thing I should point this out is we're currently working with the planning department on this. It's called the Street Benchmarking and Performance Measurement Study. And the study is looking at how other agencies are analyzing level of service, how they're analyzing impacts for projects. And the main focus of the study is to actually come up with multimodal performance measures. Instead of just level of service, auto-centric solutions, let's look at the whole multimodal aspects of each street.
Would we need to do these counts to do that, or would we know that a bicycle lane would be of value to a project without having to do this?
No, I think the counts help us, because to give the mitigation credit for a project, they need to demonstrate what the use of the street is now, and what their anticipated use will be when they implement their improvement.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for those answers, and we will not schedule it until the bicycle community and you are very comfortable about all the input, but I'd like a motion to move forward with this.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah. Please, yeah. Yeah. Do you want to second that motion to move forward?
Sure.
Okay. We will move forward with this. It's unanimous by the committee, and we will make sure the outreach is very comfortably done before it goes to the council. But the obvious intent of our enthusiasm and maybe the process needs to be clearer about how we're doing this thing going forward. Thank you very much for your work done on it. Is there any other new business or old business or anything else to have a motion to adjourn? So done, moved, we're finished. Thank you all. Have a great day.